Making and using my first Drumbone made by plans I found on the internet turned out to be so easy and so much fun that I decided I wanted to do some more research to see how it compared to the real Drumbone used by the Blue Man Group. So I got a copy of the Blu-ray of the Blue Man Group, How to Be a Megastar. This is high enough resolution so that I could put it on my television, zoom in, and collect all the details I wanted. This is just one of several frames I used to get more information about what the real Blue Man Drumbone is like. The first thing I found that is based on the dimensions of the hands relative to the inside tube is that this tube is not 3 inches in diameter, as most sites on the internet indicates, but 4 inches in diameter, which means that this tube is not 4 inches in diameter, but actually has to have an inside diameter of about 4.5 inches, outside diameter of 5 inches. This is a problem because no one makes tubes this diameter. Another thing I found is that these two tubes, the outer tube here and here, are not PVC. They are cardboard. When you zoom in, you can tell that they have the spiral winding pattern. Additionally, this piece on the alto section has 4 wraps of white duct tape to strengthen the end, because this is the end he beats on with the drumsticks. There are also finger holes here and here. When the two pieces are put together, this piece into this piece and this piece brought down, these are used by this man to hold the pieces together so they don't slide apart. The drum head for the bass section is a piece of 4-inch PVC tubing, which is 15 inches long, and the drum head material, it covers about 200 degrees of this, and it needs that much of the total dimension because he has to be able to play it in this position, and then when this is rotated down to mate with the alto section, he still needs enough drum head available for playing. Finally, there are 2 microphones, hard to see, one here and one right there, which allows for amplification of the Drumbone sound, and I'll talk about this, how important this is, later on in the video. Using this information, we're able to make a Drumbone that's very close to what the Blue Man Group uses. First, we'll need a 30-inch long piece of 4-inch PVC. And this is where I ran into my first problem, because when I zoom in on the video, this appears to be solid core PVC, that is smooth, the walls are solid. The only 4-inch PVC I could find is what's called hollow core. If you look, it's sort of like plastic cardboard. It's nice because it's half or a third of the price of solid core PVC. But I couldn't find the solid core, and I would have used it because that's what Blue Man uses. However, this seems to work pretty good, so if this is all you could find, and it's all I could find in the 4 different hardware stores in my area, then go ahead and use this, and it should work out fine. You'll need 2 4-inch slip 90-degree elbows and a 3.5-inch long piece of the 4-inch PVC to connect these two. You can glue these all together if you want, but I prefer using white duct tape because it lets me make changes if I want. Next, we need a 30-inch long piece of cardboard tubing that has an inside diameter of 4.5 inches. As I said before, I couldn't find one of these, so I had to make it. And I came up with 2 techniques, neither of which is very easy, but they each have their virtues. The first is to get a piece of concrete forming tube. This is an 8-inch, that's the smallest I could find. They do make these in 6 inches. If you can find 6 inches, go ahead and use it. I can't show you a full piece because it was used to form this one. What you do is you take your tube and you slice it down the middle, and then measuring around the mandrel. Oh, and by the way, the tube I found to form the cardboard tube around that works the best is a piece of 4-inch black ABS pipe. I got a 5-foot section of it, and what you do is you cover this with non-stick aluminum foil, so if any glue gets on this, you're not gluing your cardboard tube to this. That helped a lot. This forms the mandrel, and you basically cut a piece of the cardboard, wet it with a spritzer, let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes. That softens it up, and then you can form this around this tube and then tie it in place. I used zip ties and let it dry for several hours, and what will happen is the water will soften this enough so that it'll take the shape of this tube, and you'll have a perfect tube with a 4.5 inch diameter. The thing you want to be careful about is that you have to, because this is 8 inches and you need 4.5 inches, you actually have to cut a strip out of this. And it's tempting to measure the circumference of this pipe and say that's what you need. And that comes out at about 14.5 inches. If you do that, you're going to end up about 1/2 inch short, because what you need is the outside diameter of your finished tube. So using a concrete forming tube, I found that I needed a tube length along here of about 15 inches and 1/8 inch. And that forms a tight seam. You take your piece, like I said, you spray it, let it sit until it's soft enough to form it around the mandrel, and use a lot of twist ties, because the cardboard's going to be soft and it'll pucker up, and you want all of that puckering done. Let it dry for several hours, then you can take it off and let the inside dry, and then use some glue to glue the ends together. Once that glue is dry, then you have to take it off the mandrel, and that's where the non-stick foil is helpful. And then glue some, I used poster board, a poster board strip on the inside and the outside to help support that seam. Otherwise, even though it's been wetted and reformed, there's still some spring tension that's going to want that seam to pull apart. Now, for gluing the inside, you need to take some sandpaper and sand the inside edge to get through a layer of wax, which is put there so that when you pour concrete into this, it doesn't soften and destroy the cardboard. That's a really messy process, and it produces a tube that works pretty good, but it's not the best. A better solution, but also one that was a lot more expensive, was to get 3 4-inch diameter mailing tubes. Cut each of them to 30 inches. I can't show you the whole tubes because I use them for making the other cardboard tube. You take one and you slice it down the middle, and then you slide it onto the mandrel, and then you use the third one to cut a strip out that will fill the gap created, because this is 4 inches in diameter and this is 4.5 inches. It'll be about 1/2 inch wide. You fill that in with the strip you cut out of here, glue it together, let it dry, and then sand it down. Then you use your second mailing tube to cut a second piece of tube that's, again, 30 inches long. And this one, you repeat the same process, making sure that this time the gap is 180 degrees from the inside gap. That way you have mutual support of the openings. And again, you'll have to use your third one to cut an even wider strip. I think this is 1.5 inches to fill this in. You'll have to measure these separately depending on the exact dimensions of your mandrel and how thick these are. And again, you need to spray each of these with a little bit of water on the outside to get them soft enough so that they will form around this tube without too much tension. Once that's done, you need to take the playing end. This is the one that gets hit with the drumsticks, and add 1, 2, 3, 4 widths of duct tape all the way around. This is what they had in the video, and I don't know if that's to strengthen this or if this was a damaged tube in the video and they did this to keep it to hold together for one more performance. Okay, once you've got your tube formed, if you've used the mailing tube technique, and by the way, this is expensive. These run about $8 a piece and you need 3 of them. So you're talking $30 or more when you add in the glue and the expense of the mandrel. And it's a messy process because when you slide this piece over this one has to be completely coated with glue. So when they're slid together and it dries, this is like one solid piece of tubing. If you use the concrete forming technique, you might think, well, gee, you have to paint this, and that's not a good idea because the paint is probably going to be water-based, or even if it's solvent-based, it's going to soften this tube up and it could go out of shape, especially at the glue seam. So what I did instead of painting it was I wrapped it in a piece of white paper, and I didn't even glue this to it because the glue could affect the color of the paper. I just taped the paper to this, and it's worked quite well. The last thing you need to do is get a little steel angle brace like this and screw it to the bottom of the 4-inch elbow down there, and this acts like the finger hole to help hold the two pieces together when you put the two halves of the drum bone together. Let's go on to the base section of the drum bone. And now we'll look at the base section. Again, you need a 30-inch piece of the 4-inch PVC, 1, 2, 3 of the 4-inch diameter slip elbows arranged in this position, and you'll need a 3.5-inch piece of the 4-inch here and here to hold these two pieces together. This is a piece of the 4-inch PVC with a window cut out of it. This is 15 inches long. I'm sorry it's off screen. And the drum head area, which uses a plastic thin placemat, which I got from Walmart for a couple of dollars. And if you look at my first video, I have a long discussion about the advantages of using different types of heads. This is 9 inches long, and here again I depart from the Blue Man drum bone a little bit because I just tape this on instead of screwing it on. And the reason I do that is I'm still experimenting with different types of head materials to find something that works, that sounds a little bit better. For the slider section of the drum bone, we have another 30-inch piece of cardboard, and we've already talked about how to build those, and fitted on one end with a slightly different elbow than here. These are female slips. For this one, you want a female slip here, which slides inside of the 4.5-inch diameter tube, and a male slip on this end. And that's because this is the piece that slides into the female elbow on the end of the alto section to combine the two for the final performance. And again, I have a small steel angle brace here, and I found it helps if you bend it a little bit to act as a handhold when the two pieces are put together. What we need to decide now is if the extra expense and effort of making a full-size trombone like the Blue Man Group uses is worth it in terms of whether or not it sounds better. So let's listen first to a short section with the 3-inch by 4-inch trombone, and then we'll compare it to what the 4-inch by 5-inch trombone sounds like. And now, let's listen to the 4 by 5-inch. To my ears, and this is more obvious when you're listening to these in person, the larger 4-inch by 5-inch trombone has a deeper, richer, mellower sound than the smaller 3 by 4-inch. If you build one of these and it doesn't sound the exact same as the Blue Man Group Drumbone, that's probably because they feed their output through an amplifier and adjust it using the equalizer settings to make it as pleasing as possible. For myself, if I had to do it all over again, I'd stick with the 3" by 4" and be happy with that. It is so much easier to make than the 4" by 5". For hundreds of more articles covering everything from how to make chocolate to the strange world of lucid dreaming, I hope you'll visit my main website, waynesthistandthat.com.